Alright, I tried to turn the microphone down today so it wouldn't be so loud. Kind of a provocative, hard-edged title, I understand that. Hello? Alright, here I am. Kind of a hard-edged and provocative title. Maybe insult you in some way, or insult somebody you know. But it's designed to do that. If you track what's been happening, you'll realize that you need to be insulted. Now, the president is running for office. He has a right to do so. He's the best president we most likely have ever had. Again, I only have a certain percentage of the information. But he has not been able to stop the deep state, shadow government, criminal enterprise, which involves federal, state, local, and foreign governments, as well as federal, state, local, and foreign private sector criminal enterprises masquerading as chamber of commerce, as religion, so on and so forth. The CIA has made people's lives for them using private sector intelligence, using foreign intelligence, using NSA, using FBI, so on and so forth. And that also includes criminal enterprises of a narcotics distribution nature. If they don't look, then they don't see it, right? So if you're off limits to be investigated, that they will not investigate you, then you're free to distribute narcotics. It's the same thing as Mexico. It's done a little bit differently here, but it is done here. The fact is that nobody in government today is prepared to stop it. The CIA activity causes them to want to shrink to a small group of people and protect that group. That's what you see in Lindsey Graham. That's what you see in Trey Gowdy, and that's what you see in the others telling President Trump to back off of Barr. Because why? Does it have anything to do about Barr? Barr's one of them also. But what does it really have to do with? Stone was ordered executed by the deep state shadow government criminal enterprise. Now this is all patterned. All that they're doing is patterned after communist Soviet Union and communist China. It's a little more deceptive here on how they administer the programs. And it's not as rife. It's not as sublime. It's not as fulfilling as it is there. And I don't mean fulfilling in a good way. Kind of fulfilling like right before you puke. That fulfilling. So most of the people that would fight the deep state, or I guess all of the people, because nobody's really fighting it. It's an illusion. What they do is they enter into politics. And they put it in political context or maybe even another context. And they fog the mind around what it is. So that you can't realize what's going on. You all begin to believe that it's some other battle. Communism was within the Republican conservative wing of government, and communism is within the liberal Democrat social wing of government, and everything in between, and anything outside of that. Communism is neither liberal nor conservative. We never fought social programs. Not to say that people should be given money to buy heroin from the government gives them all this money and doesn't check it, and next thing you know they're all sitting around buying heroin, or they are a heroin dealer, or they're running a heroin counseling program and they're actually using heroin there. That's the type of thing that government or President Trump's government has been able to at least minimize. Now the jury is still out as to whether people are being disenfranchised that shouldn't be. That takes time to realize. We have to be sensitive to the fact that the people in our nation that were put into programs, not the ones that were abusing it, but other people that were in the programs, were put into that life by a system that existed. They weren't running government. They were trying to seek options, and of course, the Trump family and President Trump are trying to provide options, but the question is, did they disenfranchise anybody within that process? And that is one of the questions that is being asked, and of course people are immediately making the allegation and acting as if it's true, and it's not true until it's true. So again, I've cautioned the government to make sure that they engage in quality control and make sure the programs are real and working the way they should be in either direction. You don't want to go over, you don't want to go under. However, there are people in government today, it's a little windy today, the people in government today, the weather is kind of messy, so I really am not going as far into purchasing an electric bike as I would have. I was thinking of buying another one, but this may not be a community that's conducive. I might not stay. It's kind of wet here. I prefer a drier community. I mean, I like the people. The people are great. But like I was saying, there are questions about what the government is presenting as far as who the government is versus who they really are. So there's nobody in government that's willing to take on the deep state for the everyday person. So what happens? They begin to present this appearance of the deep state being solely against the president and his supporters within a tight-knit circle. But yet, no matter what happened to those people, they're still living a better life than many of us have lived over the last so many years. Most likely, Roger Stone probably has been the most mistreated. He's getting down to where, Robin Gritz is living, where I'm living, where the others unnamed are living. So again, there's nobody in government that's going to risk things, and that's what they build. Again, this is all CIA operated, so they're building this idea that you don't risk anything for this because you have a family, you don't want a life like that, and besides, that person's a loser, but yet you know that every single one of these people that I'm speaking about have been psychologically operated for decades, and also psychologically operated, let me get out of the wind here. I don't know why the wind is affecting this so much. Psychologically operated before anything ever happened, where everyone went, look what McCabe is doing. I guarantee Robin Gritz was psychologically operated prior to the McCabe thing. She might realize it, she might not realize it. It takes a lot. I was going over the 90s in my mind the other day, or God was, and bringing up memories. And there were these women that were sexualizing me. Now, I was married, and I wasn't going to date or have sex with any of them, or even probably speak to them more than a casual moment. But the CIA knows how to instruct people to do certain things to people, that the totality of the program sexualizes that person, radicalizes them. And again, we have the Garland, Texas incident that proved that that was true. They radicalized those people and then lost control of it. But the question is, did they want to control it? And of course, there is the specter of that. And Garland, Texas is not beyond what I was saying about the whole thing. Not every, but almost every terrorist event or major mass shooting, that somebody's out there radicalizing these people. So you're not always going to get an FBI agent to show up in the scenario. And when you do, they're like, oh, well, you're once in a million. You know, the strange thing is that Omar Mateen's father was working for the FBI, but also you should realize that the CIA knew him, and he was most likely also working for the CIA through the FBI. Again, there's that type of thing going on. Now, you say, well, what about terrorism? Well, you know, they failed. Terrorism exists because the world changed because we lost God's protection. Don't be double-minded. Get back to the Bible. We lost God's protection. That's why 9/11 happened. Terrorists are horrible. Terrorists shouldn't do what they're doing. But we lost God's protection. Why? The FBI and the CIA and NSA and the Marshal Service and the IRS were doing deep state activity unto disability and death in the 90s. And continued on through the Bush administration. And then what happened when 9/11 happened? Satan paid them. They put Mueller in. Mueller is a payment to the deep state for the activity they engaged in to cause 9/11. Now, I'm not going to tell you that they came in and they put explosives in the building. That didn't happen. But why was that information widely distributed? Because what I'm telling you happened. They lost their focus and didn't really care whether a terrorist engaged in a terrorist activity, and as long as it wasn't in their neighborhood. But guess what? It ended up being in their neighborhood. The people that were careless about what they were doing and were moving deep state activity instead of moving anti-terror activity had a lot of their friends and family killed in 9/11. But again, they try to use it for the Communist Party faithful. I'm not going to tell you that you didn't mess up to cause 9/11. I'm not going to tell you that you didn't mess up the last 20 years continuing on the deep state shadow government criminal enterprise, executions, assassinations, murders, disabling, psychological warfare, and psychological torture. I'm not going to tell you that is unrelated, because then I would be lying to you. And what does the Bible tell you about lying to you? If I don't tell you the truth, if I hide something from you, if I see something and I'm watching and I see it and I don't talk about it, it would be in my account. So all those people in the government that know about it, it's in their account. The Bible tells you that no matter how many times they go to church. Don't tell yourself there's another Christianity that allows them to be secret. There's only a certain amount of time that's allowed. God is not overbearing. God doesn't say the first day you see the deep state that you have to come out against it. And I mean coming against it. Don't tell me it's just about President Trump. So what you have there is you have the people that I identified before. I said Trey Gowdy looks to be an NNN. Flimsy Graham looks to be an NNN. Barr most likely is being provided as somebody I described prior to Barr being selected. I said they're probably going to bring somebody that's deep state to relieve the president of that stress from the impeachment, and then he's going to try to steer everything so that the president doesn't help anyone. So to the president's credit, he has stepped outside the deep state box, and he has identified a violation of rights within the life of Roger Stone. Now, it's unfortunate that I'm not in the White House, and to me, I would have never been in there, but if I really look back on my life, I understand what they were doing from day one since my childhood of being molested and all this. Satan was taking me out of ever being in a place like that. But if I was aware and awakened, I could have figured it out. And I'm not speaking about awoke. That's something that even the CIA itself could have created to discredit what I'm saying. The same way that the Q was created. Q is something different. It's spiritual. So when you see Q, if you wake up, if you become awokened and you see direction in your world that appears to be coming from something, they want you to believe it's a person in the government. Can you believe that? People that are spiritual, can you make the connection and get your head out of your derriere and realize? And I say spiritual because if people are awakened, they're not always in the church. But realize, they're wanting you to believe that God's direction, revealing, is actually somebody in the government. Could there be somebody in the government doing that? Yes. But why did they do that? Because they don't want you to know the truth. The rocks and stones will cry out. The words on the internet will tell on them. Now, Satan can mimic that, so you have to have discernment. And of course, Satan attempted to mimic that in the form of CIA, NSA, Deep State, Shadow Government, Criminal Enterprise activity, bringing up something other than the cue that you should have realized. In your world around you, when you're not oppressed and repressed of mind, you can see words within words. You can see sentences speaking about something other than what the sentence is speaking about. So because that awakening and that information was getting out, including my work and the information within the mind and on the internet and people, rumoring about what I was speaking about. So when that happens, what do they do? How you doing? They launch a psychological warfare activity to make you believe what? To believe a lie. That's what they're doing all day long. The most energy that your government spends is to deceive you. Your government's gone. There's nothing left. You have individuals in government that are moving policy that frees us from decades of downward trajectory. But that has nothing to do with what the day in and day out federal, state, and local employees with the foreign employees of government are doing to the people of our nations. Now, remember, people are coming here and getting very wealthy very quickly because they're part of the deep state. They come here and they pick up all of that stuff that's waiting for them here that Satan has provided. So you have to understand, Satan is operating in this nation. Satan is operating in the government. Don't think that President Trump is somebody who has cleaned government. No, he has provided a foundation to clean government, but government refuses to clean. We're right where we were before, but it's increased in power, and that's something that we're looking at. We're trying to figure out, and when I say we, God, heavenly host, we're trying to figure out why Satan has powered up. We don't know if President Trump is somehow doing something wrong to cause that. Again, you can't look at somebody's physical output and say, oh, that person has done much. It's what God says it is to viewing of the heart, because you have to balance the will, the heart of a person. You shouldn't be moving your will, because any will you move is against God's. You should just simply be praying, healing. You can utter things. The Bible speaks about speaking things. Prophets prophesy and speak, and then God, within that, will move where God wants to. If you're willing, then you're saying that you know exactly what God wants you to do with your personal will, and that's not ever true. Because God is the only one that knows when, where, why, and how of anything. That be salvation and everything that's more important than what the deep state and the churches have been doing to people. They're losing people from salvation. But what does that do to you? You are focused on gay marriage as if it's the oppression. Now, within the LGBTQ community, there is oppression of churches and people. But as I said, don't oppress them and you won't be oppressed. I told you to get away from it. I said, that's Caesar. For some reason, you all believe that the United States is a Christian government. It's not. Now, we are a nation founded by devout Christian people that empower people not to be Christian. But you lose your rights when you try to step over what the Bible tells you you're allowed to do. Again, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Render unto God that which is God's. And this is not new. I've been telling you this for decades. That doesn't mean that every Christian cause has to be set outside of government, but you have to realize that we're not a Christian government. And you have to realize that the Bible speaks of certain things, and churches have decided that those things are well for people. Marriage is one. Do we define that as a marriage? The Bible most likely doesn't, but the Bible says it's better for two people to be together because why? Because then they don't look outside the marriage. Now, could there be open marriages? Of course. That goes both ways, though, and no pun intended. So again, you have to understand how it works because you know enough within your lives to succeed your lives to know something's going on. So you can't ignore the fact that the world is spiritual, not physical. Satan torments me. I met one of the most mature, nicest people. She just works where I live. And she's not going to work here much longer. And she does happen to be Puerto Rican. But she's only 19. I'm like, you're only 19. And no, I wasn't like hounding her. There were several cleaning people that I spoke with briefly. I don't spend too much time speaking with people. I don't want to take them from their work. But she was one of the ones I was speaking to, and it was just like kind of a weird thing where I was seeing her and she was seeing me. I walk out of my room, she walks out of her room, and we're like, But that's happened a lot of places that I live with a lot of different people. So we were speaking. I said, you're only 19. She's like, yeah. I said, oh, no wonder. But she doesn't even look 19. She looks, she could pass for 30. If she told you were 30, you would believe it. But that's the maturity level, too, which is very interesting. Because most people, it's the reverse. They're 30 and you're acting like you're like 10. But I just waved to her. That's why I brought that up. And good luck to her in life. I told her you're going to make somebody a great wife someday. But me, I'm too old. She took it as a compliment. She was flattered. Now, of course, that happens in life. People of all ages are marrying, but that's just not something I'm going to move at this stage of my life. I know I've always agreed that there is a legal age for everything when it comes to marriage and whatever activity you all want to engage in, such as dating and sexual activity. Because if I leave that out, the FBI goes, see, you know what he's hinting at. You know what he's actually saying, right? The FBI is always doing that. They're moving their psychology and saying, that person's actually saying this. No, they're not. They're saying what they said, all of you. You're moving exactly as the Bible said you would move, all of you. And God is not mocked. God will take down your protections of Satan on this planet and destroy all of you. And anyway, you only have a limited time here and you're all going to hell. Remember, the president can protect every Christian on this planet and still go to hell if he's not right with God. And that doesn't mean that he's sinning. That doesn't mean basic sin. That's going to happen. Sin must come. Whether it's the left or the right parties, they'll be cut off. Whatever offends will be cut off. It's in your account, all of you. It's in your account, all of you. You're creeping up now. I can feel you. You're listening. All the spies. And they'll say, FBI and the CIA go, well, it's Russia, and it's Chinese, and it's French people. We can't control that. They put them in decades ago. That's how they're killing our nation and our people, using foreign powers. They go on trips overseas on assignments, and they link up with foreign government people. And they operate from outside of our nation to protect them, to make them directors like Mueller and everyone else. Everybody else is killed out when they become too good at what they do. So this is really what's happening in the nation. The president is separate from the government. You should realize that at this point. I mean, he's the elected person. He is the representative of the people. The rest of the government says, no, we are the representative of the people because we're independent of what? Election? You see, they reversed everything. They work for the president. There's nothing wrong. Years ago, I said every 2 years you probably should change out your attorney general. Looks like we're coming up on that again. And no, there's nothing wrong with it. The man should not have spoken against the president's tweeting. This is a world we live in. If he doesn't understand it, then his ignorance got him in trouble. This is a world we live in. If you're not out there every day speaking, then you're not going to be effective. And you're not going to be able to manage the office of the presidency. He's not allowed. The president, you know why the president does that also? They got so mad. Because you know what? He told Comey, hey, I think we should do this. Hey, I think that's wrong. And what did they do? They tried to impeach him. They brought up Mueller. So you see, it's a catch-22 that they're building. The president can't say anything. Because he can't go and tell Barr either. Because if he goes and tells Barr, Barr can have him investigated. He doesn't know who Barr is. Get him once, shame on you. Get him twice, shame on him. He knows that one. He can't talk to Barr. Like, oh, I should go talk to Barr about it. Oh, yeah, then maybe Barr will wear a wire. That's how nuts they are. Private enterprise, they're all communists. They can't face it, so they destroy everybody they can that might know who they are. But hey, you know, you're out there in churches and there's people in the government go, well, look at his life. I mean, look at him. Look how small he is. And they got the president that argument. Watch out about that one. The deep state's trying, and the devil and Satan and all that are trying to make you all make that argument. Jesus had a very small life. But remember, I told you years ago, once Jesus came and got so big in his death, Satan was very careful how other people were treated so that that would not occur again, where their death would make them bigger than life. So again, you know, your argument about people having smaller lives not being anything, guess what? Jesus had a very small life. John the Baptist had a very small life. They were considered criminals. Don't tell me that they weren't. Jesus never recommended prisons. And, you know, I worked in corrections. I understand the whole process. But I'm letting you know, Jesus never recommended prisons, and Jesus never said church. Didn't even say Christian. It was a little more personal for Jesus. A little more real. A little less institution. Because all you're doing is you're recreating Rome and ancient Israel when it had fallen. Now, the problem is they're battling that also. And it's, again, I told you, sometimes it's Satan, sometimes it's the deep state. But when it's the deep state, it's also Satan. They are the beast. When somebody says something about a period in Israeli history, you should realize that it's true. Because when Christ came, Israel had fallen. Just because somebody says it, you can say it's not okay the way she said it, if that's what you want to say, or something like that. But yes, the Sadducees, Pharisees, and the government of Israel at the time was murdering, and Saul of Tarsus, Paul, was one of them, was murdering people for group and personal gain, also known as a deep state entity. That was a deep state entity. So the deep state's been here for ages. It's nothing new. And I pointed to the fact that it also brings up the thought of deep states of mind. But yet we find the deep state is altering those brainwaves that we know as the deep state of mind based upon psychological manipulation. It's cult-like. The deep state is a cult. It's a cult. That's who they are. They are a brainwashed cult. Now, I've told you that they had some of the stuff done to them that was done to me. And then they're empowered. So again, it's like the basic training. They break you down and they build you up. But they build them up into what? Communist, criminal, enterprise, foot soldiers. So again, in Nazi Germany, people were arrested for murder, people were arrested for rape, people were arrested for molestation of children, people were arrested for bank robbery or whatever the crime was. So again, that's not the litmus test for government. That's actually the cover for criminal government. And that's what's going on today. Is every officer out there committing crimes? No. Would every officer commit a crime? No. Most likely some of them will be disabled or murdered in the near future using psychological methods. And quite possibly paying somebody to do it. Believe you me, I've told people about this guy that chased me years ago. And it was the same situation that caught Deputy U.S. Marshal Arthur Lloyd and got him put in prison for 15 years, but I didn't stop. I kept going. I was being road raged. And the person held a diving knife out the window, and I'm like, okay, that's a deception. He's got a gun. And there could be 2 shooters, 3 shooters in there because the windows are so tinted. Anyway, they could be selling that person out. I get out of my car. I'm a pretty quick draw, probably one of the quickest in our office. I pull my gun out. I kill him. And then I go to jail like Arthur Lloyd, but Arthur Lloyd hadn't happened yet. So we don't know if the Navy guy, how you doing? We don't know if the Navy guy that Arthur Lloyd accidentally shot, because that event was created by that drunken Navy guy. Had that Navy person not engaged in that road raging and attacking of Arthur Lloyd, he wouldn't have accidentally shot him. I mean, you have to understand how that works. There was probably a better way, but he accidentally shot the person that caused the shooting. He caused a need for a split-second decision. And albeit there's better scenarios for shooting somebody, it still was not criminal. But they used the Marshal Service file, and the file was the file that the Marshal Service had kept even before the $36,000 lawsuit that Arthur Lloyd won in court for being discriminated against. So the people that discriminated against him provided a file that said he was no good. They were building that file when I left. Believe you me, they could lie about whatever they wanted. And then they were promoted for it. That's how the deep state government works. They lie, they attack the victim, they psychologically manipulate the victim, and then they're promoted and paid cash awards and given days off. Some of those people never have to work another day in their life. They go to work and do nothing. I mean, you've seen the complaints come into the Senate and the House. You've seen the investigations, but nobody wants to get to the bottom of it. It's deep state. People getting cash awards, committing crimes, being put on leave. Now, again, that same thing could happen to a victim of the deep state. Because I brought up the FBI agent that used heroin. I brought up the Deputy U.S. Marshal that was using heroin. And those people were most likely manipulated and operated psychologically. Is that 100%? No, of course not. I can't do the investigation. The people that are supposed to do the investigation are the ones that are psychologically manipulating people using extreme CIA methods. You have to understand, we've paid trillions of dollars over the years to define these methods, and we use them in combat-only situations, but guess what? It's been taught to a lot of different people, so it can be used in furtherance of government criminal enterprise as well as private sector criminal enterprise that is aligned with that government criminal enterprise, whether it be federal, state, and local. I don't want you to think that the deep state is only federal. So, again, in the future, there are law enforcement officers that are honest that you see today that are providing cover, unknowingly, possibly, for the deep state that will be executed. Either disabled, put in prison, or commit suicide. Or possibly killed by someone else. I brought a thing up back when Obama's activity caused additional police shootings. I brought up the fact that sheriffing California, on the heels of some people being charged for being a police officer and shooting somebody, even though it was a bad shoot, it was still based upon a good thought process. My hindsight's 2020. Those officers didn't have 2020. But I brought up the fact that his mind was altered by those cases. But also, I said, there's another thing going on, and now we call it deep state, that would harass that officer and cause his mind to slip. And when his mind slips, he doesn't outdraw the perpetrator of a crime and the perpetrator of that officer's murder or wounding or murder. So again, a lot of times you'll see an officer get it into an incident, whether it be the officer shooting somebody or somebody shooting the officer, that was caused by a psychological manipulation, a psychological warfare activity, a psychological torture of a prisoner of war camp in open communities in that officer's life. Of course, others causing it. Whether it be, they take private sector people that are the biggest rat pieces of garbage on earth, and they elevate them up above government employees that are carrying badges and guns. This is your deep state. This is who I worked with. They don't care. You're a private sector, go ahead. And then one day they'll give them a position and a name so they can be famous. And say, oh, they were that 20 years ago. That's another thing they do. Once the deep staters murder somebody, they give them a nice position and title and a history that looks like they knew what they were doing when they did it. But they didn't. They were just criminal enterprise. And not just. That's why I say just. And God causes that. I don't normally say just. I try to say just, but God just causes me to say just because it's not just. Get it? So again, it's not every officer out there, and there are officers out there today that aren't disabled or dead, but will be disabled and dead and or dead in the future, based upon not being a member of the deep state shadow government criminal enterprise because they're American. These people that did this are un-American. They created another America in your mind, and you accepted it. Why? Because it made you feel good about bad things. That's how they did Soviet Union. That's how they did Nazi Germany. That's how they took over China. Satan. You're demonic. You're all going to hell. There's no way out. Much has been given to you. Men trusted you all. And I'm not speaking about basic sin. They always try to take it back to basic sin, that this person is in some sort of simple sexual immorality. This person is in some sort of simple alcoholism or simple narcotics use or simple thing, whatever it is. Whatever it is, this person is not without sin. Well, of course, the person without sin casts the first stone, and nobody could cast that first stone. Jesus didn't even cast it. Remember that. We're speaking about people with power. People that have control over the world around them. But of course, that control being demonic possession. At this point. So again, there is a basic starting point in the Bible. And I explained to you before, when I was younger, it happened to me a couple of times. I think I was in the academy, and I felt guilty for something I didn't do because they were yelling at everybody else in the class. I was like one of 5 people that didn't engage in this. This will get you attacked in government, too, because you weren't part of the whatever it is they did. I forget exactly. They didn't show up for class or something because they all went out and got drunk, and I didn't go out and get drunk. Well, this kind of thing pisses people off, and they target you for the rest of your career because you were one of 5 people. That didn't do something wrong. And that's the same thing happened with the people I work with. But you have to understand, they're being taught CIA methods. So when you enter into the workplace, there are people engaged in CIA activity to take you out. And then eventually the CIA comes in, elevates them, and does whatever it does to you. Like in Jonathan Luna's case, he killed himself. In Deputy Director Duthie's case, he killed himself. And that inspector in New York case, a month before Jonathan Luna, Killed himself. Don't look at the specific details, because if you actually looked at the details outside of how the FBI worded it, you would find that none of it made sense. Missing money that's never found. And then missing money all over the government. That's trillions, and everybody just goes, oh, accounting error. Right? Accounting error, right? Because what happened? What happened between the fine line of finding trillions of dollars missing and the day that they just said it was an accounting error? Kroll, Fusion GPS, communists in private sector. Kroll, Fusion GPS, Booz Allen Hamilton, Stanley Arkin Group, intelligence firm after intelligence firm, CIA proper, CIA contracts, and of course CIA improper there. But what did they do? They psychologically operated. They extorted. They used private sector in illegal immigrants. They used private sector narcotics distributors against these people. They don't care. It's the same thing as overseas. The CIA will use criminals. They do it here. The FBI uses criminals. Says, oh, that person's around a criminal, after they put 20 criminals around that person. You see how much bullshit the FBI is? They'll put criminals, they'll restrict somebody's life. Remember, oscillation's part of it. They'll oscillate somebody's life, and then you'll jump at anybody that you can be a friend with or have a conversation with. So they'll bring in 20 criminals, put them around the person, and say, well, that person hangs out with criminals. This is how low the United States government is. Now, you're still a people. You still have a hope in the future, but I don't think it's ever going to change. I think God will destroy. Well, that was pretty funny. I believed it was over, and then something happened to the screen, and it went off, so I got it back on. That was weird, but we're back. But I believe it's over. I believe God will destroy this planet. There's no redeemable quality. People say, well, what about the second coming of Christ? Well, if you look in the Bible, it says you can't enter the kingdom of God in a physical form, flesh and blood. It's spirit. So the whole thing is spiritual, most likely. I've said that before. The end times appears to be spiritual. I've told you that I've seen spirit bodies, and remember, God's showing me Scripture in a certain progression, so I don't believe that my mind is playing tricks on me. But of course, the FBI will tell you, our psychology, our anti-clinical psychology, our antichrist psychology is such, and he's this. But I'll tell you right now, God didn't show me that part back when I said other things related to it. So it's all spirit. I said years ago that I saw spiritual raptures. I saw angels coming down from the sky, from the sun that shoots the rays down to the clouds, and lifting weeping beings up from the ground, speaking or weeping tears of joy unspeakable, and carrying them up into the sky. And I saw demons that believed. In that vision, I saw demons that even believed. So Jesus went into the afterlife and preached to demons, and then demons believed. And in an instant, when the rapture occurred, they went to the location where the rapture would occur in their spirit life. And when that occurred, they were transformed back into angels of light, real angels of light, not the fake ones we have on this planet. Now remember, it is not protecting you when they're causing crime. Through the various mechanisms of manipulating people and moving psychological warfare and moving deep state, it has direct victims and then periphery victims. Victim is not directly involved in it, that will be affected. Again, they're thwarting God's plans. So I told you that I saw this rapture many times. And then God showed me some more information where the end times is purely spiritual in nature. And remember, he said, I see a new Jerusalem coming in the sky. If it's about the physical Jerusalem, why would there be a new Jerusalem coming in the sky? Why? Years ago, I was with the Sikhs, and they're fighting over some land in India. I think they want to be a separate nation. the story of everybody that ever has been motivated to believe that Earth has a redeemable value. I told them, I said, you're going against your holy book. There's nothing here for you. Your home is somewhere else. Their books speak about being a pilgrim and seeking a country somewhere else. Also, I said, you're fighting the wrong battle. I said, that's why things are going wrong. You've depowered yourselves by making earthly arguments. I'm not telling you you're not being mistreated by people, but you don't have the power you need to have, because essentially you've sold out to believing Earth has a redeemable value. And they live in India, and they want the Khalistan government. I said, your Khalistan is in the afterlife. It's not here. Why do you look for it here? Again, the same thing. The kingdom of God is within you. The kingdom of God is spiritual, not physical. You can't enter into it with the physical body. Now, if we look in the Bible, we could twist it and say that, it's speaking about something a little more esoteric, where you have a spiritual mind and you're doing spiritual things and you've purified and you're not carnal, and you're willing people to commit sin. I know this for a fact. You feel good about bad things. You work with the deep state, whatever it may be in your community, might be called something else, to alter people into something you could feel good about being bad. So again, you've been taught falsely. And that's the problem. What you're realizing is not the truth, but a fabricated, falsified lie that the government of the United States is now part of. The government of the United States gave in to communism. It's just communism is having fits, taking it over, and it's not only AOC. Trey Gowdy, Barr, Lindsey Graham too, also. They believe in communism. They believe in conservative communism because they believe in the deep state. Go back through that film I would post, The Subversion Factor. They're all part of it. They've been subverted. I told you years ago, before I saw the subversion factor, that everybody's been subverted in the government to accept communism. A state-run world, and the only people that get enriched are the people the state says get enriched. That's what's going on. But it isn't President Trump. It's the employees, federal, state, and local, that I'm speaking about and have been speaking about. Now, it sounds good to certain people to a certain point sometimes, because all of a sudden now you have to kill somebody. But most people give in because why? Because the CIA has analyzed every government employee that needs to get out of here. Every government employee that needs to get analyzed, so they know who, what, when, why, and where. They're already psychologically operating the person that they know is not going to be deep state based upon their psychological profile. You see, President Trump's psychological profile presented a person that would be deep state. They're still working on him. The jury's out on that. But yet, what? He didn't become it as fast as they wanted him to, so they attacked him. And falsified documents and falsified statements and psychologically operating. The problem is they're using CIA techniques against the president. They'll tell you it's a sting operation, but it's not. The sting operation allows you to make these choices. Now, judges, they're too ignorant. They're put in there because they passed the CIA test as deep state, majority of them. Not all of them, but majority of them. They have the psychological mind of being better than everyone else. Everything that the Bible tells you not to be. Physical charity does not make you charitable. Face it. Because that's what they're using as a litmus test to say that those people are Christians. But those judges believe that something's a sting operation when it's actually a CIA psychological warfare operation that does not allow choices. And of course, you saw the battle on the internet when I was bringing that up with the mass shooter, because they were already psychologically operating me. People that supported President Trump were psychologically operating me from their internet profiles. And when the mass shooter came up, they all freaked out, because somebody else was operating the mass shooters using CIA psychological warfare techniques. All they want is a mass shooter to come up, and then they go, they'll get big and bad and hoopla and all that. They don't give a shit about no one. They don't care if your son dies, your daughter dies, as long as it makes them famous, makes them rich, adds to the communist empire they're building, adds to the beast, which is that communist empire that the governments are building. Your heroes are dead and disabled, man. Those people are an illusion. Yeah, they were somewhere. Yeah, they do something, but they don't care one iota. In a moment's notice, they become the deep state fiend. They have to present the other persona to empower themselves to play out the CIA psychological warfare activity. A prisoner of war camp in open community. Disgusting filth, trash, defecation, demonic slime has taken over your governments. I told you years ago that Barr was probably a setup. I told you years ago Flimsy Graham and Trey Gowdy are in-ins. So they have to actually play a certain part until it comes time to launch the deep state psychological warfare operation trigger, which means it's always going on because they're supporting the president, they're taking care of him, they got him out of the impeachment. You know, the impeachment should never existed. The Mueller should never have existed. It's such a waste of government money and enriching the deep state people. All based upon lies of government officials that are getting off the hook. Barr knows his time's over. It's time for him to go. He's going to go back into retirement. They've probably got somebody already in the slot to take over the Justice Department. That's a deep state person also. So that's why Barr's flipping the triggers for him to leave, because the next person is going to be the same person. They're going to promise you all these investigations, and then nothing. And say the president can't tell us what to do, because why? Because we throw investigations when we want to throw an investigation, because we're criminals. We're communists. We're part of the synagogue of Satan. We're false and fabricated Christians. Because you're the sinner, and we're not. And FBI psychology says this anyway. It's their truth. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It matters what the FBI says, right? That's the truth you all worship. You all worship the CIA and FBI truth. They can come into your church today, tell you to do something, and you'll throw the Bible away and pick up the FBI and CIA psychology. 100%. You do not live in a free country today. You're just not restricted in that country. You realize what's happened over the years? Criminals have been given more rights just en masse, while mainstream citizens have less rights. And it continues today. How you doing? That's what's going on today. Yeah, well, I don't know if it's true, but something's saying that people are using heroin here. Because I had a thought about heroin, and then my voice said, that's what's going on today. And that's come up a couple times. You know, the world says, yes, there they are, because the percentage of people using heroin is very large. I wanted to get a massage today, and my regular place wasn't answering the phone. And there was an Asian massage place that looks reputable. I'm very leery of Asian massage. I've started to try to get an appointment a few times at one, and then I backed out. I'm like, it just feels too hinky. But, you know, this one looks legitimate enough that I would say I would try it. But, you know, with Asian coronavirus, you know, it's not me. I'm not allowed to put myself out like that. I have a spiritual life that I have to maintain a certain length of life in. Right. Remember, one day Jesus said, "Okay, it's time for me to go." I'm not there. Could I leave early? Yes. I do believe that Satan can cause me to leave early and has shortened my life already. And that Satan being the deep state, shadow government, criminal enterprise, psychological warfare, and psychological torture operations that do affect physical health and longevity of life. And that includes the use of religions, the use of government, use of doctors. And that's the criminal use, of course. And then they'll say, no, we have these operations within our discretion that you're about to do this because psychology says that. It's all a lie. Every last one of them knows the truth of what they're doing and what they've done, and they know how to trigger people using CIA technology. That's where your nation is. It's gone. Tell yourselves that. Get back to Christianity and realize you can't trust one person in government in reality. You can only trust God. And if God tells you to directly trust a person, then trust them. Don't get into this group thing, because that's where everyone has went wrong. Well, praise God in all what you do. Praise